Hey, what's up everybody? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use Excel to figure out how much you're actually paying for a car and a house. So there's a way you can do that in Excel, and I'm going to show you my way of doing it and using what's called the payment function. Now, full disclosure here, I did make a bit of a mistake on the car calculation. I put it in the video. I still had the same number that I should have got, but I used the sum function when I shouldn't have used it, but I still got the same answer because when you use multiplication in Excel, if you use sum, then Excel recognizes it and it just cancels it out. So that's what happened. But if you see that in the video, you'll see an orange box there explaining that. Don't let that throw you off. It's still the answer that it should have been. All right, let's get into it. All right, check it out. Now, this is the file that I'm going to use to show you how to use the payment function to understand how much you're paying for, whether it be an automobile, a house, anything like that. Why do you want to learn this? Well, let's go over to the right side of the screen. So the payment function is really important because you need to understand how much you're actually paying. You want to understand what you're paying for the item, the interest, which is really important. A lot of people think that what they pay out of pocket is actually what they're paying. If you borrow money, then you're going to be paying more for that. You want to understand how important interest rates are and the rates that you want to avoid, and really you just don't want to be taken advantage of. If you know this kind of stuff, you're going to be less likely to be taken advantage of by a salesperson or someone who's lending you money, whether it be a bank or any lending institution. And you want to be able to use this data to make good decisions about your finances. So if you make a bad decision, at least you know that you have the data and you were educated enough to make the decision. So what we'll do here is we have all these numbers here under automobile and house. So I'm going to run you through how to use the payment function in Excel to figure out what you're paying for your car and also for your house. And usually they're pretty different because they have different terms. And so I'm going to erase everything here and I'm going to get those exact same numbers. Well, the exact same formula will be used to get different numbers. So in Excel, when you're figuring this out, the first thing you want to start with, and we'll start with the automobile, is your principal. So your principal is how much you're going to be paying up front. You can also call it, you call it your principal. We'll call it that for now. So let's say that you're looking at a car and you're looking at spending $40,000 for it. So let's put in 40,000. So we put in 40,000 and then we can hit Control Shift and then it ends up and enter and we get the dollar sign, the currency right here, the currency. And you can also change it to accounting if you want to by going here, but I like using the currency feature. And then what I have here is the columns or the rows that are outlined in yellow are the areas that we actually will input the information, and then the clear ones will be the formula. So I'm going to change this back to currency. All right, number of payments. So usually for a car or a motorcycle or a boat or anything along those lines, you're going to have anywhere between 36 to 72 months are the main things, are the main payments. So number of payments. So if you are at the dealership and the car salesperson is telling you you have a 72-month loan for the car, then that would mean you have 72 payments, which equals out to 6 years. So if you had 5 years, it would be 60 payments because 12 months in a year. So you have that already. So what I like to do here so I can keep all the cells active is I just like to go in here and press equals, and then I have months and I do months right here in my multiplier cell, and then I press the shift key and I use shift 8, which is the asterisk, which is the sign for multiplication in Excel, and then I go all the way over to my multiplier column, my multiplier table, and I hit 6. So that way, all I need to do if I want to change it real quick, if I want to make it a 5-year loan, I can just type here and it'll do 60 payments. You see how quickly that changed? So I change it back to 6 years because I want 72 payments, because the car dealer is telling me that it's 76 or 72 payments or 6 years. Interest rate. This is one of the most important things for the payment function. Let's say that we're going to use these interest rates down here. These are averages that I got from the internet. We're going to buy a used car because most of the time it's a lot better to buy a used car than a new car. And so I have them set up prime or subprime, non-prime, prime, and super prime. And these numbers that are in the parens are the credit scores. And so let's say you have a credit score of 700, which is pretty good. So we're going to use 6.05%. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press equals, and then I'm going to go down here, and then I'm going to press enter. What I want to do is I want to keep these cells. I don't want to put a number in the cell. What I want to do is put the cell reference in, so that way I can always change it if I want to. I can press equals and then make it the subprime if I want to. So we'll do that, and then what I'll do is I'll switch it over here and it makes it 6.05%. Okay, now we filled out all of our yellow tabs. So what that means is we're ready to use the payment function. And we're going to use the payment function to figure out what our monthly payment is going to be, which will then feed us the total amount that we're going to pay over the loan, the principal plus the interest, and then we're going to subtract the total paid minus the principal, and that'll give us the interest paid. So we're going to see exactly how much we're going to pay in interest in the total that we're really going to be paying for this car. We're not going to be paying $40,000 for this car. We're going to be paying a lot more than that, but not much more than that, because 6% is not a bad interest rate. Okay, now what I'm going to do, and this is the part where you want to pay attention, is you want to go into this cell across from monthly payment, press equals, and then press PMT on your keyboard. You can capitalize if you want to, or you can type them down in lowercase letters. And there's one of two things you can do here, actually. You can press tab and it'll automatically put the parentheses and start the formula for you. Or you can press the parentheses and it'll start the formula for you. Either way, you'll be good to go. So first, what we have here is the arguments, and Excel calls these arguments. And you have to put in arguments in order for Excel to return the number or the answer that you want it to return for you. So with rate, and this is the trickiest part, rate equals the interest rate. So see how you have that in here in your table? You just press this down on the keyboard, or what you can do is you can either go over to it and click on it with your mouse, or you can go over to it with your numbers on your keyboard or your arrows on your keyboard, and then you press actually before you do the comma, this is the tricky part, and see, I almost forgot about it. Excel doesn't account for APRs, or annual percentage rates. APRs are how most interest is charged. So an APR would be 6.05% would be the total interest that you'd be charged for that year. It would be 6%. So what you have to do in Excel is you have to divide the interest rate by 12. So you divide by 12. That's going to give you the amount of interest that's going to be charged per month, because we're doing a monthly system here. The number of payments is by month. And so in order to not divide by 12, we would have to redo this. We'd have to redo the payments, and it would be real complicated. So we're going to just divide by 12. So after you have your 12 in there, you press the comma and then number of periods. Number of periods means number of payments. So how many payments are you going to be making? 72. So you can either mouse over it and click it, or you can use the arrows on your keyboard. And then you press comma to keep going. present value. Present value in this situation is the same as principal. So you would mouse over or go over on your keyboard with your arrows to the principal, which is 40,000. Now the FV, and then you press the comma. The FV is future value. We're not going to use that. We don't need to use that. We have all our arguments, and then type. We don't need to use that. So you can actually take the comma out, press and end the parentheses, and then this is your monthly payment on the car if you don't put any money down, if you don't do a down payment, and you have a 72-month loan, a 6-year loan at an interest rate of 6.05%. Now, what we're going to do here next is we're going to do a formula to figure out how much we will actually pay. We're not going to actually pay 40,000 because the bank is going to charge us money, 6% per year, for us to borrow the money to be able to drive this car around. And this is the consequence of not paying cash. If we had just paid $40,000 cash for the car, we wouldn't be paying extra money. So we're going to figure out how much extra money we're paying. So here, what we'll do is we will do equals on the keyboard, and then sum. You press SUM on your keyboard. You don't have to capitalize it. You can do lowercase, and then press the tab button to tab it into place. So what are we doing here? We're figuring out the total amount of money that we're going to pay. And so what that is 72, because these are our number of payments, multiplied the asterisk, so shift plus 8 to get the asterisk, multiplied by the payment, because you're paying $663 72 times over the life of the loan. And that's if you make your payment every single month and you don't pay extra. So we have that. You press the parentheses to put it into place, and then you press enter. So look at that. This number is the total amount of money that the car costs you. Notice how it's a lot different. Well, not a lot different, but it's a little bit higher by about $8,000. So now what we'll do here, the final thing that we're going to do is we're going to do another formula. We're going to press equals, and then we're going to do sum again, and I'm going to explain why. And then we are going to move this out of the way. Sum just adds numbers up. We're going to put this number here in, and then we're going to press comma, and then we're going to put the principal, and then close the parentheses. Now, the reason that you can do sum is because in Excel is programmed to think that when you make a payment, it's a negative number. And this red inside the parentheses, this $47,797 means a negative number. So if you add a negative number to a positive number, but the positive number is less than the negative number, then you can do that and it'll be okay. You're going to get the $7,000 because you started with negative 47,000 and then you increased it by 40,000, positive 40,000. And so what that gives you is the difference. This is the amount of interest that you will pay if you pay $663 a month over the course of the loan, which is 72 months or 6 years at a 6.05% interest rate. So that's a lot different. So if you had paid $40,000 for the car cash, then you would not have had to pay this $7,000. So over 6 years, so that's a little over $1,000 a year in interest. All right, now we're gonna go over the mortgage, and mortgages are a little bit different because it's usually a longer term. It's usually either 30 years or 15 years, but most people have 30-year mortgages. And I think you're gonna find that you'll end up paying a lot more on a mortgage than you would have. But the interest rates are usually a little bit lower than a car. And then we'll go back to the car and do some comparisons, okay? So let's start off with the principal. Let's use 300,000. So you could find a house that you really like and you get it, 300,000, 1, 2, there we go, 300,000. So that's the price of the house that you want to buy, and you've decided that that's what you want to do. And we're going around this with the same methodology that we did with the car that we bought for $40,000 right over here. Number of payments. We have to figure out number of payments. Now with a house, and we're using a 30-year, we'll start off with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That's going to equal out to 360 payments. And the way that you can get that is by multiplying 30 years times 12 months. So you're making monthly mortgage payments, so that's 30 times 12. So what we can do, like we did with the car, is we press equals, and then we do months, 12 times mortgage years. And I need to change that to 30 because I had it at 15 to show the difference when I was working this out. So that equals 180. But look, if I switch this to 30, which I can do, then it automatically switches it to 360 because I'm using cell references here, the I-4 and the I-6, rather than the number 30 and the number 12. Okay? So that's the most important reason why you want to use cell references. Now, interest rate. Okay, so let's go down here. These are some mortgage rates that I got from the internet. So let's just go with 3.99%. This time, I'm not going to use the cell reference because I might want to change them around a little bit. So I put 3.99%. That's what I'm going to do here. And so I have my yellows. I have everything templated out. Now I have all the information that I need to figure out what my monthly payment's going to be. So just like I did with the car, I'm going to press equals, payment, and then you can either tab it into place or you can press parentheses. I'll tab it into place. I have my parentheses. I'm going to move my argument table out of the way up here so you can see what's going on here. So now remember, for the rate, we want to put the rate. So click on the rate, but remember the most important thing is here, we want to divide by 12. We got to make sure we divide by 12 because remember, Excel is not programmed to link the number of payments, the months, to the interest rate. It's not going to recognize that. So press the backslash button, which is right next to the shift button on the right side of your computer, and then the number 12, or you can do this too. Either way, it'll work. So you do that, and then I'm going to go back and do 12. You do that, and then you have your comma. So it's time for the next argument. Number of payments. Same thing with the automobile. Number of payments, you're making 360 payments because it's a 30-year mortgage and you have 12 payments per year. So 12 times 30 equals 360. Present value, remember, present value is principal. It's what you're starting off with. You're starting off by paying $300,000. So your present value is $300,000. So you have that argument there. And remember, we're not using future value or type in this calculation, in this formula. So you press the parentheses to close your argument away. Okay, now, what does this data mean? If you have a house that you pay $300,000 for, that's the sticker price, at 3.99% interest on a 30-year fixed mortgage, 360 payments, you're going to be paying $1,430 per month. That includes the principal payback and the mortgage and the interest rate and the interest that is accrued. So now we're going to do the same thing that we did, like we did in the automobile scenario. We're going to go down to total paid first. We got to find out how much we're paying in total. So we do equals, and then we're going to multiply 360 times $1,430.52. So we have that, and we put that in. Now your total is going to be $514,000 over a 30-year time period. That's a lot more. It's almost double 300,000. So if you want to find out the exact interest that you paid, press equals, and you use sum, and then you go through here. You can move your argument table out of the way. So you take the first number here, you press your comma, and then you bring that in. You're using a negative and you're increasing the negative by the positive, so you can use the sum function. So look at that. Your house price is $300,000, but look how much interest you paid if you made the minimum payments every month. Now, some people will argue that if you have such a low interest rate, 3.99%, then it doesn't make sense to pay cash for a house, because you can use the cash that you would have put down on a down payment or buying a house in $300,000 in cash, and you can put it in the stock market, and the stock market gets like a 7-8% return as average. I think like a 10 to 12% return since the early 1900s. Some people will make that argument. It's all about knowing actually what you're paying so that you can make that decision for yourself, because I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here. You just have to know, and that's what this tool, this payment tool in Excel, will teach you, and being able to use it to give you the information that you need to make the decision that's best for you and your family. All right, so now I'm going to show you when things can get really bad. And the way that things can get really bad, if you don't know what you're doing when you go and buy a car, is if you're messing around and you're paying too much principal, or your interest rate is too high, or both. If your principal is too high and your interest rate is too high, you're going to pay a lot more than you should for your car. And when I was a company commander 5 years ago, and you always see it in the Army, you see soldiers that are going out, these young 20, 21-year-old soldiers going out, and they're getting a $30,000 car that they've always wanted, and they have no idea what good interest rates are, and they're paying like a 35% interest rate. And I'm going to use that example because I had a soldier like that. He already had the car when I got to him. When I got to the company, he was driving around, I think it was a bright yellow Daytona Charger or something like that. It had Daytona spray painted or painted on the body, and he was paying, I think, around 25-30%, and I couldn't believe it, and I don't think he even knew what he was doing. And if he did, then I don't know, more power to him, I guess. So I think let's just use in his example, let's use $30,000. All right, so he paid $30,000. I'm going to assume, let's assume that he had a 6-year payment, so 72 months. But why don't we put in 30% for the interest rate and see what happens here? Look at this. $902 a month. $34,000 in interest. Look at the difference between the principal and the interest. The interest is more than the principal, and that is crazy. If you're buying a car and somebody is going out and you're like, this is what ends up happening, especially outside of military bases, is you have these car dealers who take advantage of people who don't know a lot, and it's really terrible. And it's hard to stop them because, I understand you got to do what you got to do to put your food on the table and feed your kids, but sometimes you got to draw the line. I think taking advantage of people's lack of education is probably not the best way to make a living, but I digress. Look at how high that interest is. It's terrible. And look at the amount that you end up paying, $64,000. So for that Charger he was driving around, he probably, for that $64,000, he could have gotten, I don't think we had Teslas back then, but he could have gotten a much better car, or better yet, he could have saved his money and gotten a less expensive car and actually taken his leadership with him and figured out how he could get a better deal on a car, and they could have helped him out. So this is an example of when an interest rate is way too high and your principal is too high. And that combination can be lethal to your finances when you're buying a car. With a house, the main thing that you want to avoid with a house doesn't really have to do with the principal. You should always be responsible with a house, but Where you can really get in trouble is with this right here, an ARM. And an ARM is an adjustable rates mortgage. ARMs are some things that you should absolutely stay away from unless you are a financial professional and you know what you're doing, or you are very well off and you can afford the consequences that typically come with ARMs. Because what an ARM is see how you have fixed and fixed. So these interest rates, if you have a 30-year or a 15-year fixed mortgage, these interest rates cannot change. They cannot change. You will pay 3.99% over the life of the loan, for better or for worse. Every payment you make, it will have that incorporated into it in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to go any lower. It's not going to go any higher. But an ARM can go higher or lower. But most of the time, what ends up happening is lending institutions will sell somebody an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage, and it'll start at a very low teaser rate, and then it'll increase by like 3 or 4%. And an increase of 3 or 4% will usually mean that the person will not be able to make the payments and they will end up defaulting on the mortgage, which will then mean that the house goes into foreclosure and their credit is ruined for a really long time. This is one of the reasons for the financial crisis, or the housing crisis that caused the financial crisis of 2007 through 2009, because these companies were lending people who had no business getting houses, who had no business borrowing the amount of money they borrowed. They were getting them in the door with these teaser ARM rates, and then a year or two, or less than a year, probably a couple months after they got the house and they were making their payments, they had an adjustable rate mortgage and the interest rate completely shot through the roof. It would go from like 3 to 7 or 8%. And with the interest rate skyrocketing, because it's an adjustable rate mortgage, then the payments every month will skyrocket. And they were barely making their payments when the interest rate was around 3 or 4%. Think about the interest rate doubling to doubling up to like 5, 6, 7, 8% from 3 or 4% all the way up to 6 or 7, 8, 9%. It's bad news. So that's one of the reasons why many people defaulted on their loans, and that caused the financial crisis and the real estate bubble to pop. So let's go back to the table here. So mortgages, people make arguments on whether or not you should buy a house in cash if you have it, or you should free up that cash because you're getting such a low rate. Well, it's all about what you want to do. This is just a tool so that you can understand how much you're actually paying for your belongings that you buy on credit, that you're borrowing someone else's money for. I hope that you enjoyed this video today and that it was educational. This is all stuff that everybody should know. So if you want a copy of this worksheet that I went through today, feel free to email me at jude.g.b.co. I'll send it right over to you. I have no problem sending this stuff for free. This is stuff everybody should know. You can bring your computer with you the next time you go to the dealership, or the next time you're thinking about buying a house, just so you truly understand how much money you're really going to be paying. Because the car salesperson, he or she's not going to tell you. The people at the bank who are giving you the mortgage, they're not going to tell you. They're just going to tell you the interest rate, and they're going to tell you how much the house costs. They're not going to tell you how much you're going to pay, because they know that if they do, in both situations, it's going to make people think twice about making the purchase, which will in turn keep money out of their pocket. It's not a diss on anybody who's in that line of work. It's just the cold, hard truth of the fact that if you know how much you're actually paying, it's going to make you more aware, and you're going to be more conscious about the decisions you're making. So until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day.